come down soft and hot. You're loving me now or loving me not. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano comes. Oh, no time to count for what it's worth. 'Cause I just left this planet Earth. Where I go, I hope there's rum. I know there's gonna be a lot on the island tomorrow. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano blows. Well, I don't wanna land in New York City. I wanna land no Mexico. Don't wanna land no Green Island. Don't wanna see my skin blow. Don't wanna land Comanche, Skyport, or in Nashville, Tennessee. Don't wanna land no San Juan Airport or the Yukon Territory. Don't wanna land no San Diego. Don't wanna land no Buzzards Bay. Don't wanna land no Iota. I got nothing more to say. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano blows. No, 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 no. All right, good evening, everybody. It's Wes Seiler here with Preserve Navarre Live. Happy Thursday night, and I got Mr. Randy Williams.
Thank
in
you
the
for
building.
having me. I
Yeah,
appreciate
man.
that. Look forward to the
Yeah.
opportunity to discuss the elections tonight and how they're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
impact our community.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a lot of fun stuff, too.
Good.
So,
I'm looking forward to it.
because, I know everybody has been talking to me about the election results, so I figured why not have a show, bring in one of the campaign managers. I know you were involved in a lot of campaigns.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like it's going to be a good chance to detox. Like,
Absolutely.
it's been a lot of politics. It's been a lot of mailers and text. I mean, I was getting, gosh, I don't know, 5 or 6, it felt like, of those mailers every day.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I was like throwing half of them in the trash.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was just like,
Yep.
there you go. And the same thing with text messages. It was just all the time. And then everybody had their signs out there, and it was just kind of a furious end to a campaign. And now it's like, oh, like I'm exhausted.
Well, you
Like,
say that, and then on the ride over, I'm sitting here. My phone's still
Yeah.
being blown up
I'm
now
sure.
by national campaigns.
I bet, man. Because,
So-
we've still got a lot going on. But
and a lot to go to till we get to
And the
November.
other thing that's going to be fun is talking to you about, like, how do we interpret the results? Because
Right.
people are calling me constantly saying, is this good for you guys? Like, what do you think? Like, how do we work, with the people who won? And are you disappointed in certain races and happy in others? And so everybody's trying to make sense of it. And I know I saw some footage this morning at the county commissioners where everybody was making sense of it. And Angie Carter had some really nice words
Yeah,
to
yeah,
say.
it was
like,
awesome.
about unity, and like at the end of the day, we all got to get back to being Americans. We have these
Absolutely.
elections for a reason, but it's time to chill. But I'm so happy to have you on this broadcast, Randy, to bring your expertise, but also for you to get to know a little bit more about Navarre.
Yeah.
That's what we do in this show, and y'all that have been watching it for months, that this is a fun show. It's very relaxed. It's very
Yeah.
chill. It's a chance for people to come in and comment. It's live, so I see we've had several people comment already. I know
good.
Angie's watching, Chuck is watching, Tom is on here, several other folks. Let me know if the sound is coming through, if the picture's coming through well. Want to make sure that we're delivering good feed and audio for you guys. We see all the comments they post right here, which is a lot of fun. So if you've got thoughts on the election, if you've got thoughts on the results, you want to post that, let me know. I'll be happy to put your comment on the show. You've got stuff that you want us to talk about. I mean,
Yeah,
we're here
that'd
for
be
the next
great.
hour. You let us know what you want us to get into, because it's always a lot of fun to do this. I do want to give a big shout out to some of our sponsors. And I was kind of talking to Randy, I was talking to you about this. We've kind of built this thing up, Randy, since January, because we wanted to have a chance for people to get together every week to get off the normal little comment feeds and threads and actually interact with us live
Absolutely.
in a very respectful way, get to know who we are, and be able to talk about a variety of topics. And people like the Panhandle Shop make that happen, and several other businesses. But this was one of the first ones that sponsored us and said, you know what? We need this. We need this show. We need to be able to have a place to go and to talk about this.
and to talk about Navarre and to celebrate our community. And the first thing, Randy, that you need to know about Navarre is that it is a patriotic community.
Yeah.
Big time. I mean, you've got military people here. You've got veterans who have served for years. You've got contractors, all kinds of people put in time. But, in addition to that, you've got business owners. You've got charities. I mean, you've got all kinds of people who really celebrate the military, celebrate our country, and love its freedom. And Tom is one of those people who captures that in these gorgeous wooden flags that he makes. Him and his wife make them out of their home, and then they're happy to sell them. They custom, make them for you if you want small or big. And I actually have a couple extras in the studio.
Yeah, I think those are really, really nice.
Take a look at this, man. Isn't this amazing?
Yeah.
Like, you can see these, and they're just absolutely beautiful. They're thick, right? They're durable.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of them in my home. But yeah, he'll put inscriptions on there if you want or whatever you need. We've actually got some with plaques on them that we've gotten made. And then he'll do I'll show you this real quick, the subdued version. I love this one. Isn't this great?
That
Like
is
he'll do a
fantastic.
different color scheme for you.
Yeah.
And that's just amazing. And larger, right? He'll do some big ones.
Well, here's the good news
Yeah.
about those is the fact that you love America, you love the flag, you want to display it.
Yeah.
What a great way to display. You don't have to worry about going out and taking the
Right.
flag down every
Exactly.
night. You put it up on the front of your house
Yeah.
somewhere and you display it.
Yeah, and it's a great gift.
Yeah, absolutely,
I love
yeah,
that for
yeah.
holidays and
Beautiful
stuff like
gift.
that. So he's one of our. He was an early supporter of ours, but not the only one. We've got several. We've got some of the top businesses. I'm pretty sure you've eaten at these places. I know I've taken you to a couple.
Actually, I
but-
have eaten in both places.
Good.
Several
Okay.
times.
All right. I would hope so.
I
because,
love Navarre. I love coming down.
Man, Andy D's and the thing that he has done with that restaurant is incredible because Andy took over that restaurant about a year ago, and it's phenomenal. I mean, he turned into the culture, and it is the most lively place you'll go to. I mean, there's events. They got bingo nights. They got live music. I've seen Doc Rubman play there
yeah.
many times. And talk about a patriot. I mean, he loves this country. He loves what it stands for, and he's happy to host groups like ours. But not just us. I mean, I see like military folks coming out and celebrating promotions and
Yeah.
retirements and all that stuff. My unit's been out there many times. But great place for locals. All kinds of great specials and discounts and things like that.
We know
for
kudos
us.
to Andy
he's
D. I
great.
mean, I see him over there when I'm there, and he's talking to people
Yeah.
and friendly and upbeat and all that. And I've had an opportunity to take a look at some investments in restaurants. And first thing I say is, I know absolutely nothing about running a restaurant, and it's a job.
It is a
and
job.
he pulls it off with ease.
He is there all the time.
Yeah.
Like him and his wife are there every time you walk in the door, and he's running such a tight ship
Yeah.
because he's constantly improving and renovating, and he's got new stuff coming out, and again, just such a passion for
great.
this community and doing it the right way. He told me once, he's like, my goal is to turn into the culture.
Yeah.
And that's it. Wherever we come from, Navarre's got a culture, and you can either fight against it and lose, or you can adopt it,
Yeah.
cherish it, and promote it, and that's him. The same thing for Robert Reyes and Stripes. Stripes
I've
is
been
talking about
there several
patriotism.
times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Amazing. And the same thing. Robert's there all the time. I'll
Yeah.
go out there and meet with people and stuff like that. And there's Robert, and he'll just come by, shake your hand, and tell you what's on the menu, what's
But that's what
specials.
the community is about.
Yeah,
These
yeah.
guys own these restaurants. They don't sit in the back and do paperwork.
Yeah.
They're out shaking hands and meeting
Yeah.
the patrons, which is good.
And both of these guys, they came on the show and hang out and kind of explain the thought process behind the restaurant, why they set up the way that they did. Robert came in with some beers and was like, let's do this, man. Let's have a good time. So that's the kind of down-to-earth people that we have in Navarre and some of the most
awesome.
successful businesses. And then I got to mention this one other one, which is Carmen Reynolds, who's
Oh, yeah.
traveling, and I miss her dearly. I hope she gets a chance to watch this show because we love her to death. But Carmen is the driver behind the Veterans Treatment Court.
And you have no idea how many hours Carmen has put into this.
Right.
A lot.
Exactly. She works endlessly
Yeah.
on causes that are so important. And you talk about patriotism, you can measure it with flags, you can measure it with, service to the community, you can measure it with a lot of different things. But one of the most important ways to measure it is through how we treat veterans, especially those who are in a tough spot.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what the Veterans Treatment Court is. And we would not have one if it wasn't for Carmen.
Yeah.
Because she was the one who said, hold on a second, Okaloosa has one, Escambia has one, Santa Rosa County does not. And then she asked, and they said, well, we just don't know if there's a need. She's like, oh, come on. And she did the research, and she proved it, and they were like, you know what, you're right. And then Rudman took it, and you had Senator Broxton, DeSantis all got on board and said, let's make this a thing.
That is
and so now you've got it here. So this is how
Thank
you
you,
reach
Carmen.
out to them. If you want to get involved, they need mentors. They need sponsors for veterans as they go through treatment. Veterans Treatment Court, the number 4, src@gmail.com. That'll reach out to Carmen, and then she can plug you in. So a lot of good folks.
And we
are
owe
involved in
this
that.
to the veterans.
You absolutely do. You absolutely do. And that's a good way to give back. So lots of great folks behind this to make it possible. And I love you all. But yeah, I'm already talking about it, man. The local heroes in Navarre, and people just don't realize how special this community is. They know about the beach. Everybody knows about the beach.
Right.
We can see it here from the studio, and we love it. You know, it drew me to this place. But what anchors people in this community is once they get to know the people. Yeah. And I'm not talking about online. I'm talking about in person, flesh and blood folks that you get to spend time with, hanging out, getting to know on a personal level, and you develop these friendships. You hear their stories, and you're like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that we had NFL players, right? They're getting ready. They're in preseason right now from Navarre High, who are now at the professional level, winning on Sundays. We talked about Robert Reyes. I mean, you need to hear his story. When he's got a minute, just say, hey, man, tell me about what you did in the military. It's incredible. That's a photo of him right there.
That's awesome.
Talk about the legacy of people that grew up in Navarre and Holly, like Rick Landreth. If you've seen the movie Black Hawk Down,
Of course.
they're portraying him. He is one of those guys that they're portraying that was part of Black Hawk Down. Amazing guy. And then entrepreneurs, people like Kevin Lucas. I mean, you can add so many different folks who are doing great work in a multitude of ways. And tonight, I want to add somebody to this, which is Emily. And Emily is amazing. So this is a girl who went to Navarre High School. She's part of the soccer team there. She's worked her way up. She's now out of Orlando, and now she is an Olympic gold medalist.
How about that?
Isn't that amazing? So Navarre
from
Press
right
has
here.
a whole thing right from Navarre. So you can add that to it. Is now we've got Olympic gold medalists who are out there representing their country, representing Florida and Navarre as they're doing this kind of stuff. Isn't that wild, man?
I think it's great.
And that's what we believe, you know, in our group, is that this community, it deserves to be recognized for what we've put in. The people are just amazing heroes, and this is a podcast where we get to talk about that. We get to talk about, you know, where people came from and how they got involved and how they serve and getting to know their stories. So that's what we get to do. But I'm excited tonight to hear yours. And I always ask, you guys know this, I always ask for photos of people and where they came from to get to know them. And we've talked about a lot of athletes, and that's something that you know, right, Randy?
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
talk to me about this one, man. I've got a couple
man.
photos. So, I mean, starting off with the heavy hitters, literally.
And, well, you know, this was back in the day. I spent some time in Louisville, Kentucky, which is the born and raised there was Muhammad Ali.
Amazing.
And this picture is actually the first time that I met him, and as you can tell by the haircut, that was several years ago. And so he was so giving of his time, and he just loved
what
people.
was he like in person? Like, talk to me. What was the interaction like?
Well, it's really funny because people always say that, and I remember the first time I went to dinner with him. I had a good friend who was very close with Muhammad. His dad actually trained with Muhammad at the gym originally when they were kids in Louisville. And so he knew Muhammad very well. When Muhammad would fly into Louisville, he'd go pick him up at the airport. He'd call me and say, hey, I'm picking up Muhammad, let's go to dinner. And I remember the first time I had a really good friend of mine who had a really nice high-end restaurant. And I called him and I said, hey, I called the front desk and I said, hey, it's Randy. I said, I need a table for 3. And the lady says, oh, Randy, I'm sorry, we're just slammed tonight. And I said, well, is Frank there? She said, hold on. Frank got on the phone. I said, Frank, it's Randy. I said, I need a table for 3. He goes, buddy, I wish I could help you. You know, we're slammed. I am totally slammed. I said, listen, I'm coming with Muhammad. He said, come on, I'll find you a spot.
Of course he did.
So it was great.
Who wants to tell him no, right?
Exactly. So it was great. And that same night, we're going down the street, and I'd always interacted with Muhammad and seen him and stuff. But the first time I'd really, you know, kind of behind the scenes, away from people, we're going down the road. And one of the things that people know about Muhammad is he had this little trick that he would do where he would rub his fingers together, and he would go like that by your ear, and it sounded like a bug. It was in your ear. And so he did that to my friend John, And John said, bring it on,
Yeah.
and like he wanted to square up. And Muhammad, in his later years, and including that picture there, he had Parkinson's, so it slowed him down a bit. And so I was blown away. He still worked out every day. He still ran every day.
Yeah.
Physically, he was in great shape. And all of a sudden, when my friend John did this, he went into the Ollie Shuffle. I mean, this is walking down the street in downtown Louisville, and he's doing the Ollie Shuffle, and I'm sitting there like mesmerized, going, "Oh my God!"
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity to get to know him and visit him a bit when I lived there. Yeah, that was the very first time that I'd met him. Of course, being in broadcasting and stuff, I was there covering the University of Louisville football game, and Muhammad came out.
Yeah, he came by.
Yeah, so it was great. Yeah,
amazing.
Great guy.
And not just him, right? Like I'm looking at all kinds of
Oh yeah,
photos
well I've been around because of being in the broadcast business. I've been around music celebrities, sports celebrities. So it's been. I've met everybody from the Rolling Stones to Aerosmith.
Wow.
You just named I could have brought you all those pictures, but they were like really old and I looked really silly. This is Montrezl Harrell. Montrezl played for the University of Louisville and then went on. Of course, now he plays in the NBA. That was in Tallahassee a couple years ago. I was there.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine's the SID for the University of Louisville, and we're backstage. And I said, "Hey," in the press room, and I said, "Can I come see the guys?" And he said, "Absolutely." So I go back, and Montrez was there, and we snapped that picture. So I've been around sports pretty much, in entertainment business my whole life.
Yeah, I mean they're just people, right? Like they're people out there playing a game and enjoying their life and and competing. Yeah, I've had a chance to do a couple of things like that. And it's a ton of fun when you get them off script and see who they really are.
And you realize they're people like we are.
Yeah, of course.
They put their pants on exactly the way we do, and I mean it's just good. You learn a lot behind the scenes,
right?
And I worked for MCA Records for about 6 years, and I mean I met everybody from Jimmy Buffett. I mean, just goes down the list, and you really get to know them. The ones that are difficult are the new artists because all of a sudden they're rock stars, and they're a little difficult. The ones like Buffett and one's been around for a while, they're easy to deal with. They know they know the game. Yeah. So, but I've met a lot of people, so I've been very fortunate in my life.
Man.
So.
Yeah, those are some great stories. And then I love that. So I recognize this one immediately.
Yeah.
So I'm from Tennessee originally. I grew up in Memphis, and I was like, that's got to be Gatlinburg. Like, there's only so many places in the world that look like that.
It was it was just a beautiful day. Yeah. And it was funny. It's been a week up there, and then the last day before we were getting ready to leave, which was on a Monday, we wake up and it's like snow covered.
Oh yeah.
How beautiful.
Yeah.
God, it was nice. Yeah, that was a good.
This
trip.
is where we go. I was telling Randy when I saw this picture, like once a year we're going up there, and it's an awesome place to go chill, relax. Because when you're living in Florida, you're living close to the beach. That's where most people come to chill.
Right.
This is our home. We see it every day. So, can you chill here? Yeah. Yeah. But sometimes it's good to get away and see a little different landscape and then come on back.
It was a great time.
Yeah, I love
so
it
relaxing,
up there.
man. It really is.
It really is. Yeah, it's a nice place to visit if you get a chance. And then I was telling you, Ray Eddington's from there. He's from Chattanooga.
Yeah.
So when I was showing him pictures of Gatlinburg, he was loving it. He's like, yeah, that's where I'm from too.
That's home.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. But, coming down here, so many people have different stories and stuff of where they came from. But now, is this where you're originally from, or where did you grow up?
No, I grew up in Pensacola.
So you're a local
and then
guy.
I was gone for about 21 years.
Yeah.
And then just decided that, I was just tired of shoveling snow and the cold and all of that. So I said, I had an opportunity, so I moved back.
Came home. Yeah. That's how I feel too, is like, I love seeing the snow, but once a year, and I love being able to come home and get
exactly.
We'll go up. My wife's from New Hampshire, so we'll go up there, get our fill, and then we're like, well, right around the time that it starts to hurt, that's when I want to go home.
Well, see these hands? Yeah. Haven't seen a snow shovel in about 15 years. It's nice, isn't it?
Exactly. All right, and then I got one more. So talk to me about the bike.
Well, that's my Harley Davidson.
Yeah.
It's a 1200 custom, and bought it several years ago, and people talk about de-stressing and just relaxing. That's wind therapy.
Yeah,
you jump on that thing. You don't have your cell phone's not in your hand. You're just cruising down the highway, and the wind hitting you in the face.
I love it. And you've been doing that, I'm sure, or having to do that a lot, I'm sure, with all the stress from the elections that we were talking about at the beginning, and so much work that you put into those things.
It's a lot of work, but to me, it's not stressful.
Okay.
I enjoy it,
Yeah.
and that's the reason I got into the political stuff was because
Yeah.
of the fact. Well, for two reasons. One, I enjoy doing it. I like helping the right people, and I like to see the right people representing us in office.
Yeah.
And that's the reason. I mean, people will say, well, there's a lot of money in politics. No, it's not. It's not about that for me. I don't need the money. It's about helping people and helping our community.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm about.
Yeah, that's when I first met you and saw you doing stuff, was getting involved locally and all that, seeing you at a bunch of different events and like, wow, this guy's connected to a whole lot of people, like trying to make a difference. And
yeah, that's all I want to do.
And
some people say
gosh,
nasty, well, politics is nasty, and all the dirty politics and putting out negative things. But there are times when you need to make people aware of what these candidates are about,
Yeah.
because we don't want to put the wrong people in office.
Right.
And that's my thought on it is if somebody has, certain issues and all that, I mean, there are candidates we just took out of office that, had we known the real them in the beginning, would we have voted for them?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do, is trying to find people like the Bobby Burketts of the world and people like that who are in it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
He cares about Santa Rosa County, and he wants to make a difference and make an impact. Those are the kind of people that we want in public office, not people who are in it for their ego. And I remind politicians that I know quite often, humility goes a long way.
Yeah.
Be humble. Be a servant. Don't get this air about you that you're up here and everybody else is down here, because you won't last very long in politics.
Well, and that's the thing that's really challenging for, I think, a lot of us in Navarre is you have a lot of people who are working at the military bases.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're transient, they're coming and going. And and I was that guy. I was active duty when I first came here, and it was like, are we going to stay?
Right.
And if you're only going to be here for a couple years, right? Like I've had people that live on my street only live here for a year because they got called off to do something else, or they deployed, for a long time. And then as soon as they got back there, it's time to head to the next duty station. And so they're involved in that world, focused on national defense, and they know the issues. They know a lot of the candidates and stuff, but they're not living in it every day like some of the civilians are, right? So you have a lot of that. And then you have a lot of people in Navarre who have spent 20, 25, sometimes 30 years in the military, and the last thing they want to hear about is politics. My goodness, they spent their entire time, serving the country and all that stuff, and they just want to enjoy their retirement. And then here comes all these like ads and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge in Navarre to get people out to vote. It's a challenge in Navarre for them to dive into the local issues and get to know people. And they're busy. They're doing important stuff.
I come from a advertising marketing background. That's what I do. Is in a couple of my businesses. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I think we, as a county, as whether it's the north end or the south end, I think that the supervisor of elections office should do a better job educating people. I went out this election cycle and knocked on a ton of doors, and it didn't matter if it was June, July, or August. People were still saying to me, "Oh man, are the elections coming up?"
Yeah.
We have to do a better job of educating voters on when the and don't just do it a couple of weeks out.
Yeah.
A Facebook post and a website, update is just not going to do it. We
Right.
need to market that. We need to get people involved,
Yeah.
and in the process instead of catching them off guard. I sat at some of the polls or some of the polling places on Tuesday, and I had people walk up to me and say, "Yeah, who all's running in this race?
Exactly.
Any idea who I should
Yeah.
vote for?"
Yeah.
That's, and I just
yeah.
don't think we do a good job as a supervisor of elections. And I don't think it's just Santa Rosa County. I think there are some other counties that kind of get the same turnouts. But we, as that office, have to educate voters and get people involved. I mean, I remember I had the supervisor of election in Escambia County as a client, and every year, about 3 or 4 months out, we would talk about and put together advertising packages that educated voters.
Yeah.
It's coming up. Everybody knows about the one in November, but they don't realize how important for us locally that these elections in August
Right.
are.
And the conversations that I have are very similar because I will have people with master's degrees with tons of experience, and they're calling me and they're like, "All right, Wes, give it to me straight and give it to me quick. Who's running? What do they stand for?
Right.
You know, and then who do you think I should vote for? Like,
Right.
make your pitch.
Yeah.
I got 5 minutes, you know, and then I got to go to the next thing, right? And I end up having conversations with several people saying, "Here's my perspective on
Right.
stuff," and then you make your call, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, "No, I appreciate it. Thanks." Boom. There.
Yeah.
And then that's just kind of like that mentality of get it done right. So what I'm excited to go into, and I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts on this as we go along, is that's what I want to hear from you. Like, I've got my own opinions on this, everybody knows, but I want to hear from you kind of your interpretation of, you know, what's the significance of the different races that were up for grabs, who was running, and then how do you interpret the results, right? And I think that's going to be really fun for people.
Yeah.
Starting with the Board of County Commissioners. And a lot of people don't, you know, fully grasp this because a lot of people come from different places in the world, right?
Right.
They come from different areas where, you know, maybe they had a chartered county or it was run a different way. They don't realize necessarily what influence or impact does this office have on me.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of preview this for me. When we talk about the county commissioners, what is the impact of that office in general? What does that mean for this area?
Well, you just don't realize how much control over your life that the county level has over
Yeah.
you, even more than the state, the federal. There's decisions that are made every week or every meeting. It's on a constant basis that, you know, decisions are being made that can affect you personally.
What's an example of that, Randy?
A good example of that is road construction.
Okay.
You know, you're going to be stuck in traffic. You know,
we know.
and we know about that. And the other part of that is somebody who is applying for to rezone a piece of property that may be next to your office. You know, an example that I give of that, and I don't go to the podium at the meetings and all that until it affects me.
Right.
And a couple of situations where there were going to be commercial buildings put in close to my subdivision, and so I go to them and say, "Hey, look, we don't want this. You know, I don't agree with the zoning being changed, and for creating a lot more traffic and a lot more other issues, safety, you know, a bunch of other issues, and so that stuff affects people's lives. You know, things that they do on the state level, not so much. Federal level, not so much. You know, but I think people are more afraid of the national stuff, like, you know, the IRS and things like that.
Yeah.
But the locals, I think, affects you.
It's
a lot
interesting,
more.
yeah.
And it's important that we put the right people in place to make the right decisions. You know, we're the constituents, we're the boss. It's not about the person sitting up on the dais. You know, it's about the people that they represent.
Yeah.
You have to represent them the way they feel about things, and their opinion matters.
Well, and it's interesting, like you talk about a dais, and a lot of people in Navarre don't see that because that dais is up in Milton.
Right.
And like, we don't, if you're not from there, you're from Navarre and you're working, you know, locally or on base and stuff, how many times are you going to go up to Milton?
Right.
I mean, I remember, you know, my first couple of years living here, I was like, okay, where is this building? You know, across from the McDonald's, like what? You know, like I finally found it, but it's not nearly as present for us as it is for a lot of the North End folks, right? Because it's easy for y'all to make a trip. When we go up there, we took people up there 3 times, you know, over the summer to talk about a vote.
And it's a trip.
It is a trip. Yeah, it is like you're getting up at 6 a.m. to make that 8:30 meeting, you know, because it's at least an hour, if not more, and then you don't know what the result's going to be, you know. And a lot of these people don't necessarily make their way down too often, and so when people see the results of their decisions, they've got to trace it back. Wait a minute, now I'm going up to Milton for what reason? You know, oh, because that's the county and the BOC. Like for us, there's a steep learning curve because we don't see these guys as often, I think, as some of the other districts. And then, of course, not being incorporated, we don't have a local government, right? We've got Ray Eddington, who's coming down pretty often and spending time with us, but it's one guy,
right?
You know, it's one guy, you know. So for us, it's like, wait a minute, like, who's responsible for the parks?
Yeah.
Like, where's the staff? Like, oh, there's not one.
Right,
just a couple volunteers.
Call Milton.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you know, the dog park, you know, needs some work. Who do we call? Like, I don't know. Like, right? So there's a lot of that, of not necessarily realizing how impactful these folks are. And then you do, and you're like, oh my gosh, you know, this is a big deal. So talking about the big deal, This election, I think, shocked a lot of people because you had multiple incumbents in this race, and typically your incumbents have a leg up on the competition, right?
Well, I told you I knocked on a lot of doors.
Yeah.
And the every single door just about where I had a conversation with somebody, they all said it's time for a clean slate.
Why?
I told several people it is not a good year to be an incumbent.
Why is that?
I think they were fed up. They were sitting in traffic.
Yeah.
They were dealing with all this massive, construction and all of that, and they were hearing about some of the shenanigans that were going on. Just some of the silly stuff. Stuff where people weren't being humble and weren't doing what their constituents wanted. They were doing what served them best.
Yeah.
And people were fed up.
Yeah.
And certainly the results of it are just that. It shows.
It shows, yeah. And I've got kind of the breakout here. It's a little bit difficult to read just because of the writing from how small it is on the screen. So I'll read this off to you. Is when you look at that District 1 race, and again, people in Navarre as well as all over the county are voting on this. So it's not just these different districts. You are elected at large, which means that everybody in Navarre is voting on these races as well. So when you look at who y'all voted for as well as larger county, and you look at the District 1 competition, I mean, Sam Parker was smoked.
Yeah.
You look at Bobby Burkett, and we were fortunate. We had Bobby on this show back when he first started running, and I love the guy. I met him, and I met his wife, and I was like, oh my gosh, like just down to earth, man of God, like very humble. You talk about a servant, and like immediately, like you could just tell.
He every time I would see him at different events, and I'd always go up and say,
"Don't
hello,
forget
of course.
Burkett."
Well, he'd say, I'd say, how's everything going? You feel good? Blah blah blah. He would always say to me, he may have said this to you, it's in God's hands.
It's in God's hands. That's right.
If God wants me to serve, then I'll serve. So he's humble and
very authentic.
Yeah, I think him, Ray Eddington, Kerry Smith, those people, I mean, they all got into it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Kerry's focus was, he was hearing, and he was dealing with, we've got to build roads, we got to work on the infrastructure. There's so much we can do, and the same thing with Bobby and his experience with working with the county. He knows that stuff. He knows we shouldn't be clear cutting. He knows that the trees suck up the water and help with flooding and those sorts of things. And we talked about that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So I think having somebody in there that's going to focus on that. And I thought Rhett Rowell ran a really good race too. Kudos to Rhett.
Yeah, it's the District 3 race.
Yeah.
So this one you had James Calkins, who was the incumbent, and then you had Rhett Rowell and you had Jerry Cooey in that race, the three of them running. And then the breakout there was James Calkins in third. Jerry Cooey beat him by a pretty small margin, but definitely came ahead of him. And then Rhett Rowell's the one who really did well in that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think Rhett he's young, but I think, he's got a great family.
Yeah.
He's got a great, base, relatives and support, in the north end of the county. And I think he'll do a nice job.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's, we didn't talk about why he was into it or any of that kind of stuff, but yeah, I think he'll do well.
Yeah,
I really
absolutely.
do. I hope so anyway. I hope he really does well.
And one of the things I liked about Jerry Cooey's race, and I didn't get to know Red as much, but both of those guys, again, really focused on local issues, really focused on speaking the language that you talked about of like, here's our plan to be able to get smarter growth. Here's our plan to rein in some of the overdevelopment. Like they were really speaking the language, that citizens were talking about. Whereas James, I mean, I love that guy to death, but he just stays at that national level all the time, and then it's like, I agree with him a lot on those national issues, but like you talked about, the county's focused on something much more specific.
It needs to affect us. A flag is not going to fix the roads,
right.
And some of the other things, dealing with illegals. And I remember sitting there listening to the county commissioner meeting when he brought up this whole thing during the election, and everybody knew it was an election ploy, or it was about the illegals, and there was a big busload of people who stopped at that Love's truck stop
Yeah.
up on Garcon Point Road,
Right.
and they got out, went inside, and all this kind of stuff. And I had, and some people, you know, had posted something about it on Facebook, and I called Kerry Smith and I said, hey, what's going on with this? He calls Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Department and says, oh, it's just some guys. They're going to Texas. They stopped off at a gas station to get some refreshments, use the facilities, and got on the road and go. And this was 3 months before James brought this up, and then and it was already that wasn't what it was. You know, he wanted to use, he didn't do his homework is what it was.
Yeah.
He didn't bother with it. And so, you know, I mean, when you don't do your job and you're there to grandstand, people are not stupid. They understand and will put somebody else in there
Yeah.
and they'll do the job. So he was just a big disappointment, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah. And then the District 5 race. So this one was Colton Wright, who was the incumbent, and then Mike Priest was the challenger. I was surprised on this one because I didn't see many signs for Priest. I don't even know if he came by. Most of these guys come by and do
No,
events.
he didn't do any of the
I didn't think
forums
he
or
campaigned
anything.
very much, and yet he was within striking distance of Colton Wright.
I
That was
said
shocking.
6 months ago, it is not a good year for incumbents, and that race is a reflection of it. And I've had conversations with commissioners, and here's the thing: they're not individuals up there as far as the public sees. It's the Board of County Commissioners. So if one does something wrong or they don't vote a certain way, they kind of get looped together as a board. So if you go up there and
That's true.
the meetings go awry, and all of a sudden you got a lot of, you know, just drama and stuff, it reflects on the entire board, not the individual board members.
Totally get that.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing that's big part
And
of this,
I like Colton. Colton's a really nice guy, and I think he really does truly care.
Yeah.
But I think there were some things that, you know, the fact that he's an incumbent, but also the fact that, you know, there were some things that people didn't like how he voted or maybe handled himself, and the election shows. Hopefully
yeah.
that will tell him, look, you know, I need to make a little bit of an adjustment here and start listening to people more, and humility.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
The other thing, and this is fascinating to me because a lot of people don't see this, is when you look at these results, they're like, oh, okay, like this is interesting. And you kind of like assume that the finances are somewhere close and, you know, they all had relatively equal access to funds to be able to do it. Not the case. Not the case. And I'll
Not the
show it
case
to
at
you.
all.
This is wild. Is look at the finances for some of these candidates, because you look at that. We just talked about the Bobby Burkett versus Sam Parker race, and here is Bobby Burkett coming out with a strong showing and, you know, much higher vote turnout, and yet like his finances are a fraction of what Sam Parker had. You're talking $41,000 is being shown versus $180,000
Two
for
things.
Sam Parker.
Two things made the difference in that race.
Yeah.
Number one is grassroots. Bobby Burkett and his wife
Yeah.
knocked on doors.
Yeah.
They went out and met the people. And I'm going to tell you something that can really affect a race big time.
Yeah.
He went out and he stayed humble. He worked hard, and that paid. And the other side of it, you know, the two things. One was him working hard, and number two, it just wasn't a good year to be an incumbent in.
No matter how much money they had.
Right.
Yeah. Unbelievable. And then there was these PACs, these political action committees that were involved.
Yeah, so it's not just this
There's more
money
money
that they
being
raised.
thrown at it.
Oh, they use multiple
Wow.
PACs and just, I
Wow.
mean, just really just, you know,
Yeah,
spend
which was a
ton
lot
money.
of the mailers that you got and
Correct.
stuff. And so,
Yeah.
you know, you're showing like a 4 or 5 to 1, you know, expense gap, but it's more than that. Like when you throw in the PACs, who
It's
knows?
not, it's
how-
not just about who raises the most money. So there's also strategy involved as well.
Sure.
You know, so.
And then we see that with the Calkins race is again, you know, if you're Jerry Cooey, you're saying, man, you know, I didn't win this race, but you also had $41,000 versus his $140,000, right? So all of a sudden you realize, look, you know, I was being outspent several times over, and yet I came out ahead of this guy.
Yeah.
And then you see where Rhett's at, just ahead of Jerry Cooey by what, about $20,000-$30,000. So, you know, a pretty significant gap there, but still not what Calkins had, right? Even together,
Right.
they're still not getting close to what Calkins had. So again, that spending at a certain point wasn't doing it for them. You know, even as much as they poured into that, it wasn't bringing them the type of returns.
Well,
Pretty
and it's
fascinating
also
stuff.
about how you spend that campaign money.
Yeah.
You know, you can't focus it all on, you know, particular, you know, topic, and you can't go negative the whole time because people want to know about you.
Yeah, and that to me, again, I kind of mentioned that with Calkins is like there was a lot of questions about who he was, where he came from, all that stuff, and I don't think a lot of answers surfaced. It was still kind of, yes, we know that you love Trump, and we know that you're a Republican. We get that, but
how does you being in office benefit me?
Exactly. We want to know about you. We want to know about what are your plans for the next 4 years.
Right.
What are you going to do to help with traffic and infrastructure and flooding? We deal with that all the time in Navarre. Every time there's a hurricane or a big storm, what are you going to do for those things? That's the issues, not so much the national level
That's
stuff.
exactly
that,
right.
Is
You know,
much
this whole
Yeah.
Christian conservative, pro gun, all of that. It just isn't as effective as maybe it was in the past. Most voters want to know, how are you going to make my life better?
Yeah.
You have this position, and how are you going to use that position to make my life better?
To me, it's more the application of those things to the local level, right? So I would say it's taking conservatism and then how does that work out at the local level? What are some conservative things that you could do in Santa Rosa County very specifically? And then when you look at that, a lot of people are not, liking the way that he did that. So there's other ways to do it. And that's what you see from the Bobby Briquettes and the Rhett Rouse and things like that.
Right,
so, all right, I want to look at a couple comments here from folks that have jumped in.
Okay, great.
So let's see what we got here. So Paul is on here. We were talking about educating voters, right? And he said, we have the straw vote coming up. The people need to be educated. What is the straw vote? What are we voting for, and why should they care? So this is for our group.
Absolutely.
We've worked. That was one of the frustrating things with Calkins and Parker is we went up there 3 times asking for a vote on a corporation, and oh my gosh, like the runaround. It was well, we want Rudman up there, and then I brought him up there, and he's like, okay, cool, Rudman's here. Then we're just going to ignore what we had to say. Now we want Andrade to come up, and then it's like, really, okay, how many times we're going to do this? We want you to hire a consultant for your study. Okay, we hired a consultant for the study. Now what? And they're like, okay, moving on to the next. I'm like, can you guys just give me a list so I can just do it? It's like petitions came up, and it's like, how many? Well, we don't know. I was like, well, I can't do them if I don't know how many.
Right.
Like, are you going to make it a law so we know you'll actually do the vote when we're done? No. Okay, well, then I'm not going to do it. It doesn't make any sense. Right?
So it was just basically kicking the can.
Yeah, it was just running around in circles to no benefit. And, it was really frustrating to people. And so we've hired a company to handle this, an objective third party, folks that have done this for 100 years and more. And we said, okay, if the county won't do it, you guys do it, and then let us know the result. And they said, sure, we'll do it. This is what we do. And so, but our job is to let people know that this is happening. So this is coming, but it's the same kind of things. Like, look, regardless of where you land, and James was always like, I'm against a corporation. Okay, cool, fine. Regardless of where you land, the people should get a chance to speak on this. Can you please provide that? And when they're not doing that, they're not being helpful with that, and yet they spend all this time like arguing about the national level stuff. It's like, come on, this is your actual job, is to give us a process so we can complete it. So that's, Paul, you're totally right. That's on us to be able to educate, and I hope that other folks get involved as well doing that. And I've seen the media starting to pick up on it and realize what's happening. Amy says, I told everyone I came into contact with about voting last Tuesday. They just didn't care, sadly, and then complain how things are going in the county. We get mailed the sample ballots to our homes. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And I think that's important, Amy, to be able to show them, hey, this is where you vote, when you vote, and these are what the candidates stand for. Because it becomes noise, Randy, especially for people who are busy. They're raising families, they're doing all this stuff, trying to put food on the table, working in this economy, and it's not great. And then they're like, okay, well, Bobby Briquette seems great, but then I get a flyer saying that he's for a different party that I don't like. Well, now what's the truth? And I don't have time to sit there and argue all day long. What is the actual facts? And help me sort through this. And I think that's the job that every candidate
I don't
faces.
think a flyer in the mail is enough.
It's not enough. You
I
gotta
don't
meet
think
'em.
posting to your Facebook page at the Supervisor of Elections Facebook page is enough.
Yeah.
They need to market it. They need to put it out there, get the message out, just like the candidates do.
And they need to get out there.
Yeah, educate people. People are busy, man. We get overwhelmed with a lot. You got kids, you got job. There's so much you have to do.
Yeah.
It's their job to educate voters, and I think if we did that, we would have a much better turnout than what 25, 26% on election day.
Yeah, I agree.
especially the primary.
Yeah.
Now, people will show up probably in droves, we hope, for the presidential and the other stuff in November. But I just think that we just don't promote that
Right.
August primary like we should.
And then Paul asked this question: do you think that Preserve Navarre movement affected the race? And if you do you think it's a positive for our movement? So this one's for me.
Okay.
Because, Paul, for us, we're a nonpartisan group. So again, I mentioned the military part of that. We've got a lot of folks that are active in reserve, including myself. And so as military folks, we have to keep that in mind. Is we can't be overtly partisan in what we're doing. It's against our orders, right? So
Right.
we have to that. But more importantly, as a group, we're welcoming, just like a church and any other charity or nonprofit. You go to a grocery store, they don't ask you what your political party is when you go to Walmart.
Right.
Our function is to serve the entire community. Now, I am personally partisan. I have my beliefs and
Right.
strongly held. But when we come to Preserve Navarre, just like your church or anything else, you have those beliefs, you hold on to them, but you also allow other people in. And so for partisan races, as a group, we can endorse people, but we don't often do that. But we're happy to host them on the show and, again, educate folks for them to make a decision. Now, when you talk about, is it a positive for our group? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, again, we had Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents all going up there asking for a vote. Asking for, and even some of the anti people, were like, yeah, why not have a vote, right? We had them, mentioning on our channel, and they were against all of us. So they're telling Republicans, Democrats, Independents, no.
Right.
And so at that point, it's like, this isn't a partisan struggle. This is like, are you going to allow us to vote or not type struggle.
Right.
And so seeing those guys lose their office and then seeing people coming in who seem like they're going to be a lot more fair
Right.
and respectful and work with us a lot easier, that's awesome.
Right.
And just, again, doing stuff that benefits everybody.
Well, no matter what you are, your party affiliation, or whether you believe in, one thing or the other, you're still their constituents, and they should listen to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And not just put their hand out and say, nope, don't believe in it.
Yeah. So in that sense, it's really good for what we're trying to do to get
Yeah.
to a place where we've got a BOCC that's going to engage us, I think, with a lot more collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, a couple other races here. So we had the school board, right? So interpret these from where you had district, I think it's 2, with Maria Calkins, Elizabeth Huey, and Oscar Lachlan. I've met several of these folks. I've met Oscar. I've met Maria. I don't know if I've met Elizabeth Huey, but it looks like with this one, it's going to a runoff between
is.
Oscar and Elizabeth. So what happened in this one? What do you think?
Well, I think what happened in this one is I mean, certainly with Oscar's last name, his family's been involved in Santa Rosa County for a long time.
Okay.
And certainly that helped him.
Yeah.
I think the fact that Maria Calkins decided to get in last minute, I think that certainly, I don't even know why. I don't even know why she got in the race.
I see.
But, she certainly didn't do anybody any favors by getting into the race.
Yeah.
I think certainly, if she hadn't gotten in, we wouldn't be having a runoff right now. Oscar would be, the winner in this race.
Well, yeah. He spent a lot of time in Navarre. I've seen him down here many times.
I'm
He
going
was
to tell you
getting-
something. Just like Bobby Burkett, Oscar Lachlan worked his tail off
did.
in this election. And I'm not talking about just, from a financial, boots on the ground.
Yes.
I mean, I remember him coming to forums, sweaty because he had been out knocking on doors.
Yeah.
So he worked hard for what he got. So
Yeah.
so we'll see how that all works out.
I saw a lot of work from him, even early on. I mean, he was down
Absolutely.
here running 5Ks and working with
And
the
you won't
chamber.
meet a nicer guy.
He-
He
oh my
really
gosh,
is just
like,
he's down to earth.
so down to earth,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Okay, and then talk to me about this one. So you had Charlie Elliott and Angie Strong. So
yeah, Charlie was the incumbent in that race.
yeah, this one was pretty close.
I think the reason I was involved in that race, from a candidate and advisor standpoint, I think this is one of those ones where you had a guy who is, as he even said, I've been in Santa Rosa County my whole life. It's one of those good old boy
Yeah.
type things, and that's what, because we would, knock on doors and talk to people about this
Yeah.
particular race, and a lot of the times we got the fact that, well, I've known this guy all my life. Well, okay, well, you can know somebody your entire life, but if they're not doing the job the right way and listening to their constituents, then I don't care how well you know them. If you're a friend of mine and you're in public office and you're doing a bad job, I'm gonna call you and tell you.
Sure.
And I'm certainly not gonna vote for you again if you don't do the right things.
Right.
You know, I know for a fact the candidate that I represented in this race, Angie Strong, got phone calls, emails, text messages, instant messages on it, reaching out to her because they wouldn't get a response out of their school board person. And that's what I mean by, you know, just sitting and not doing what they're supposed to do. And then all of a sudden election times comes and they just wake up.
Yeah.
You know, and it's disappointing. The better candidate did not win this race.
I see.
I'm just telling you now, the better candidate did not win that race.
Yeah, and I mean that happens sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Like,
I know.
yeah, it happens because you talk about the relationships kind of override everything,
Right.
Right, the handshake and all that stuff, and that's a great thing for people that can cut through it and talk to people. But if you've already got that relationship,
Right.
seeing it objective can be.
And there were multiple issues during the last 4 years. You had the issue with the mask, and parents showed up in droves at the school board meetings, and they wouldn't budge. We were the last county in Florida to lift the mask mandate.
Yeah.
You know, Escambia did it, Okaloosa
Yeah,
did
people
it,
forget
and we were
that.
the last ones. And nobody on the school board stepped up and said, "Why don't we listen to these parents? They don't want masks on their kids."
I
You know,
remember Rudman sitting here, and people were saying, "What did he do in his 2 years?" And he's like, "Medical freedom? Like, does anybody did COVID not happen? You don't remember that? Like,
Right.
That was a thing. Like, you know, like maybe we just have trauma from it. And we want to forget about it, but like."
Right.
That was a thing when and it still happened, and the results of
And
it.
I think the other big thing
Yeah,
that race
yeah.
that was overlooked as well was the inappropriate material that's in our school. You know, I've got a kid in Santa Rosa County Schools, and some of the stuff that I've seen, I'm just telling you, it would make anybody blush, and it would also make that person angry if they had a child in school and they again sat on their hands, did absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and then the clerk of the court. So that's my last one.
Clerk
for
of the
you for now.
court, yeah, I helped Ginger Pace, and let me tell you something about Ginger Pace, because there was like some stuff that came up that said, you know, that when I first got involved in it, people said, no chance, shouldn't have a chance, and those are the candidates. Ginger Pace had been there 35 years. Ginger Pace was a good person, a great family, and a hard worker, and just wanted to serve the people and correct some things that were going on at the clerk of court's office. So I said, you know what, I'll take it on. And I'm going to tell you something. Her opponent raised probably 3 times the money, and the race
I have that,
was
actually.
in a few different what is about 2,000, 3,000 votes difference in that race. So we gave it a good hard run. She's a great lady from a great family and just an unbelievable person. So,
I mean, again, that's the big part of this that you don't always see is you see the results, but it's just over double. Yeah, as you see.
Isn't that something?
Him having 83 and she's got 39.
Yeah.
You know, so you kind of see that of. Wow, again, in striking distance with half the funds, less than half the funds. So, yeah, that's an interesting part of this. But I love it because what I do, man, and I'm maybe like the only one, I celebrate all these folks, right? And even the ones that I disagree with. I told James, I saw him down the road the other day. I was like, hey, man, and he had just disagreed with me, and we had debated and all that stuff. But I just gave him a hug, and I said, it's all good, it's all good. I may not like the way that you present sometimes, but you know what? That's your right as an American.
Right.
You have the freedom of speech. You have the freedom association to get people together. You're taking, this money and you're standing for it. And it really comes down to what do the people want? Are they going to come out? Are they going to vote for this? And if this is what they want, then that's what they get.
Well, and
right?
again, you have to say kudos to all the people who decide to run because it's not an easy task.
It is not.
One of the things that's always an issue, people who get involved in politics early on struggle because they're not used to talking about themselves, being braggadocious. The others they're not comfortable with public speaking.
Yeah.
So that takes time, and you're exposing everything when you do that.
Yeah.
You're exposing yourself, your history, your finances. You got to lay all your financials out. Once you qualify, everything's out on the table. So I mean, that's putting yourself out there when you run for office,
as well as misinformation and lies and stuff like. I've had people say that I'm a Democrat, that I'm a liberal. People say that I'm not a Christian, all kinds of just made up stuff. And you deal with it. And if you fight them and you say, no, that's wrong, like, let me tell you who I really am, they're like, oh, now he's being arrogant and too assertive.
Oh,
and
I
then
know.
it's like,
You can't
okay,
win.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to come off so. Now he's weak and like, you know, like it's like I can't win, right? Like,
Right.
you know, so it really comes down, and I would point to Bobby Burkett as like the model leader for our county who exemplified how to handle this with grace and strength. Is the things about Bobby that I love the most is, number one, his spouse was all in. Like, if you get to know Renee, she was there with him, and she was just like, for such
Everywhere.
a time, yes, for such a time as this, is like they were doing that stuff together, and she was 100% behind him, and that is so important.
Oh, it's so important.
Because you know, and I told him, I was like, yeah, like it's both. It's gonna take both of you, because he's gonna be out there all the time, and you're at home. Where's my
Right.
guy? Or you're gonna be out there with him, and you're gonna see what he's going through.
Well, not only that, but once you're elected, you know, the spouse plays a bigger role, or even a bigger role than what, because he's coming home and going to say, or she's coming home to their spouse and saying, you know, "Whew, let me tell you what I did today and what I had to do." And so
And Bobby
having that
dealt with all
support's
that
important.
stuff. You know,
Yeah.
they called him liberals. You know, they said, oh, he's a Democrat. And then you look at it and you're like, wait a minute. No, he was a Democrat decades ago when all of this county was Democrat.
Exactly.
When Democrats represented something very
Our
different.
parents were. I
Yeah,
mean, that's what
like-
it was, you know.
Yeah, Trump was, you know,
Yeah.
Reagan was, like
Yeah.
back in the day. You know, it was, so he's not a Democrat today and hasn't been one for a long time.
No, they called them Blue Dog Democrats
Yeah,
back in
back
the
then-
day. They
back
were
in the day.
about,
They
you know,
didn't-
hard working and all of that.
But they
you know.
didn't give him a fair shake on that. They just made it seem like he was a Democrat today, and he's not.
It's
right?
just a way of twisting it.
So
a bit.
yeah, but he handled that with such poise and strength
And a big
you know,
old smile.
Yeah, and he's just like, nope, that's not the truth. Truth is, you know, I love Jesus, and this is how I vote. This is who I am, you know.
Yeah.
And then Renee's like, absolutely, you know, and like he just kept on pressing, and I was so impressed and I told him, I was like, man, if you start to have success, they're going to come at you.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, we're ready, you know. And I was like, oh wow, okay, because I've seen a lot of people when they come at him and they just fold, but
Yeah.
not Bobby. And so to me, Randy, I point to that race and to that couple as this is Santa Rosa County's best. These are the folks that are modeling how do you stand in that firestorm and not let it get to you,
Right.
and keep on pressing, keep making sound decisions. And I am so somebody asked earlier on here, do you think it's positive for our movement, these results? It's not just positive for our movement, it's positive for the whole county.
Absolutely.
And this is how people need to handle that rough and tumble game. That's how I feel. You know, I'm so excited from an ethical and a spiritual standpoint that we're lucky enough to have somebody like that who made it through the storm. And I think that's why the county rewarded him with so many votes.
Yeah.
You know, and so for these other candidates and stuff, win or lose, look to folks like that. And he's not the only one. Bobby's, you know, he's going to make mistakes, I'm sure. We're all fallible human beings. But look to examples of that. Write down what he did. And if you're going to run again, do it the Bobby Burkett way. You know, do it his way. Stay strong, stay committed, stay steady and poised, and stay connected to what motivates you.
Well, I'll
in
just
his
tell you
case,
now,
is faith.
campaigning is not easy.
It's not,
It really
yeah.
is. It really is. And I mean, it's a lot of hard work. And don't
Yeah.
think you're just going to roll up there and sign up, and all of a sudden, you know, that's it. It's work.
It is
hard
and
work.
A lot of them. Yeah, I've been there, man, and I've seen it. So, Amy was talking about how she voted for Angie. No one is better at a job than someone that can come up through the ranks. You might be talking about Ginger as well. Chuck said great articles concerning honest ballot, incorporating Navarre Press. Yeah, there was a great spread on that. So that's next. Talking about campaigning and just the slog that it is. We're coming up on that pretty soon for our group. And we're going to have some more information about
Well,
that
let
pretty soon.
me say this real quick. You know, the thing about it is people will sling mud and say, "Oh, well, you're doing negative campaigning. You're doing negative campaigning." Well, that happens all over the country. I mean, you think about the Dimick Gates race. I don't think I saw one positive ad for either side. All they did was they were slinging mud. And I'm not saying that's what took place in Santa Rosa, but there was a lot of negative. But I can tell you one thing: in all the candidates that I helped this election cycle, not one thing that I put out that was negative was not truthful. Everything that I said, I can back up. And that's important. It's okay because again, you go back to wanting to expose a candidate that you're not comfortable. You know, you don't think that they're good for the position. It's okay to address that and bring that up, as long as it's truthful. If it's not truthful and you're just slinging lies, I'm not about lies. I'm about the truth.
Yeah.
So
I think the struggle that we all deal with is when your emotions get activated in it.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's where it becomes a problem when there's malice and hatred. And that's what I told you. Like I shook James' hand like the day after we had a debate, and I said hi to Maria, and also I shook Sam Parker's hands. You know, like we saw each other, and I was like, "Hey, man," you know, because like, look, we're disagreeing on an issue, but you're still an American. You still have your rights. Like, and you know, as a Christian, me personally, I'm going to love everybody, even someone who's on the opponent side of an issue.
Yeah.
And that's why I love so much what Angie was talking about today and all that stuff. Angie told me, she said, you know, I got it this morning and I was excited about the results, but by the time I got to the meetings, I said, you know what, I got to love these
Angie
folks.
Carter, you mean?
Yeah, and I'm going to extend some grace to them, and I'm going to talk about sewing this up and coming back together as a community. So that to me is an important part of
At
it.
the end of the day, we're all Americans.
Yeah.
We're all Santa Rosians, or however we say. I have a hard time saying that. But we all live in Santa Rosa County, and we're a community.
Sure.
And I remember when I was in Tallahassee. This has been probably 6 months ago. There was a guy standing outside the elevator in the Capitol building, and he says, "Where are you guys from?" I said, "We're from Santa Rosa County. We're with the Republican Party." And he was like, "Oh, I'm a Democrat." I said, "Well, you're American though, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, we're all together."
Exactly.
You know, and that's what we need to look at. You know,
love that,
put all this stuff behind us, and let's move forward and make the county we live in much better.
Yeah, Paul says respectful to all, friend info, and I think that's where we need to be.
That is exactly right.
And again, a lot of the folks who ran exemplified that behavior, and are proud of them. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank
Randy,
you. I
it.
appreciate
So
the opportunity.
we do this live every Thursday night. It's always fun. It's always fun to hang out and learn stuff. I just learned a whole bunch from you, man. I'd appreciate you sharing your perspective. So if you've got guests that you want to see on the show, let us know. So we do this on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and then we get to post clips from the show as well after it. So preservenavarre.com is where you can go to be able to log in, get on our email list, get connected to what we're doing to try to serve the community. Randy, I know you've got a whole bunch with all you're doing, so any plugs you want to make for your news and all that kind of stuff that you're doing?
No, just go to my Facebook page. It's Northwest Florida News and Sports, and we share tons of information on there. We love people coming in and having dialogue. And, and
famous or not,
and
right?
that's exactly right. Yeah, but we're all about telling the truth there. So
awesome.
So if you want the truth, that's where you'll find it.
All right, thanks again, Randy, and thank
you
y'all
bet.
for tuning in. We'll see you next Thursday.